Hi, my name is Myra. I'm a graduate trainee at Phillip Morris, and this is Lepas Sekolah.
Myra, tell us a bit about your childhood. Where did you grow up and what kind of student were you in school?
So I grew up around the PJ and TDI area actually, but I moved to Bukit Jelutong and Siti Alam because my school was in Siti Alam. And as a student, when I was little, I think I was a little bit rebellious. It was kind of hard for me to do my homework. Overall, I feel like I was quite an outgoing kid. I was always, looking for opportunities with things like performing arts and stuff like that. And I would say I was pretty outgoing and extroverted. Yeah.
And given that you are outgoing extroverted, were there like any favorite subjects in school that
Mm.
mm,
So I went to Tenby International School, and there was like a wide range of subjects that we were able to take. So obviously, one of my favorite subjects became drama and actually English and English literature. So I found that I really enjoyed subjects that let me express myself or being a little bit more analytical and somewhere that gave me a lot of room to experiment or be flexible. So I would say English and drama.
and did your school allow you to be expressive in these classes? Or what would opportunities existed?
Yes, my school was very, very good for being expressive because every year there were two school productions and I was always involved in them. So I was in things like A Midsummer Night's Dream, I was Sandy in Greece, I was in a play called Back to the 80s, and they gave me lots of opportunities. And beyond that as well, in classes itself, I think my teachers were very friendly and my teachers were very supportive of, expressing myself and being who I am.
Growing up around this age, was there any key character that shaped you into who you are?
Yeah, so of course, with my parents were never restrictive of, what I could and would do. The typical Asian stereotype is that, your parents want you to pursue a certain job or a certain industry. But I find that my parents were very supportive of whatever I wanted. Of course, they gave me their own, advice and their own learnings from their own childhood, but they never outright said no to me. I actually even had like offers to be in like girl groups or pursue music, but one thing that my parents did was they always reminded me to at least prioritize my education. And so I think that's kind of been my direction and how it's really fueled my ambition lah. In school, again, my drama teachers, Miss Rachel and Miss Amy, were very encouraging. They always pushed me out of my comfort zone, and I grew a lot of confidence because of them. Yeah.
Myra, given that you were around an environment that was very supportive of what you want to be,
Yeah.
what was your ambition when you were growing up?
I think I didn't have a specific ambition. I just knew that I wanted to be somewhere where I could feel proud of myself. Of course, when I was little, I had like ambitions of like, I don't know, being a singer or a pop star. But I knew that I wanted to do something creative. So I think even now, outside of work, I try my best to pursue creative things or find ways to channel that. Yeah.
And looking back on your days in Tenby, would you have done anything differently?
I think even though I was pushed out of my shell a lot, I still had a lot of self doubt and a lot of, second guesses on how I should present myself. And I think what I would do differently is to go for it. Try for all the sports that I wanted to go for without being scared of like people and their opinions. I would just pursue everything without thinking. Like I think I held myself back a lot, even though I was given many opportunities. And I think looking back, I would probably tell myself to take them.
Mara, upon graduation from Tenby, you went to KYUEM.
Yeah.
Um, why KYUEM and why A levels? Was it always the pathway?
Yeah, so I did IGCSEs, and I think growing up, I kind of always knew I wanted to do A levels because it seemed like a very stable, solid pathway pre university. But I did want to challenge myself and be in an environment that would make me grow more. So I think when considering options for A levels, we were looking mainly at boarding schools lah. So there were a few options around Malaysia, and ultimately it was my mom who kind of suggested KYUEM. So before that, I actually never really heard of it, but a few of her friends children went to KYUEM and they had like good things to say. And so we decided to check it out, and we saw that, it's a very high performing school. There's a lot of great opportunities that come out of it. So I went for an open day with my family, and from there, I literally remember after the open day, my dad looked at me and was like, "Yes, you're going here." Yeah.
So, what was your first impression of KY, and let's say what was your first few days there?
Well, at first I was, I don't think it was very intimidating, but it was a big adjustment because, you're living by yourself. You don't know who you're living with. I've never experienced this sort of like boarding school culture before. So I was nervous at first, but I think quickly I became very close with my batch. My batch was really small. I was in the 18-month program, so there was only about 30 of us. And there were also a few people who, like me, took IGCSEs, so we kind of bonded over that because, um, most of the school was filled with really bright and smart people, and it was nice to connect with connect with them. And I think they made it a lot easier for me to adjust. So slowly over time, I think I enjoyed that like independence. Yeah.
KY is obviously known for it to be very close knit, very tight. Also, a place where a bunch of the brightest minds in Malaysia tends to go to.
Yeah.
How do you adapt? How does it ever affect your confidence?
Mm, I would say actually that I'm very, very grateful and very fortunate to have experienced such an uplifting community. You're right that it's filled with really bright people, really ambitious people, but I have never once felt intimidated by it. Instead, actually, it was more inspiring for me because all of my friends were really supportive. I made a really good group of friends and met a lot of people like yourself. And overall, I feel like it became like a nice community. At the end of the day, it was us all in a little bubble, literally in the middle of nowhere. And I feel like instead of having that sort of like hard pressure on each of us, I think everyone was already ambitious enough to strive to do well. And it never felt competitive to me. I feel like if anything, it was only pushing each other to be better. And that's what I really, really enjoyed about KY.
What subjects do you take for A levels, and why do you choose them?
I took economics, history, and maths, and I briefly took marine science in my first term. But I realized that, with an 18-month program, it was kind of a lot for me to handle. So I dropped it after one semester. But the reason I took those subjects was because, truthfully, I had no idea of exactly what I wanted to do yet. And I wanted to keep my options open as much as possible. So I thought to go with some subjects that I would enjoy but wouldn't restrict me to a certain pathway. Yeah.
And as you mentioned, you wanted to find a place whereby you could be away from home, a boarding college, right?
Yeah.
How was that transition? How did you adapt to a boarding school?
I think myself being naturally extroverted, it was easy for me to make friends and talk to people. So that was definitely a factor. But another thing is, I do enjoy my personal space. And I believe that, making your own space yours and making it feel as close to home as possible is really important. So I made sure that I made my room, I started off in the apartments, and I made sure that my room was as cozy as it could be and that I enjoyed my space. I had pictures up, I decorated it, and to me that made the experience a lot better because I felt like I wasn't in some unknown place. I felt like I had a piece of home with me, and I enjoyed my boarding school life a lot more because of that.
And Myra, what advice would you have for someone who's about to go through the same experience? What advice do you have for someone who wants to build a strong support system?
mm. I think one thing to keep in mind is that everyone there is probably feeling the same way as you, and you are definitely not alone in feeling nervous or scared or worried about things. So try to tell yourself that everyone here is on the same page, and that there's no harm in making new friends, there's no harm in talking to new people. And for all you know, you'll probably form like one of the strongest and longest bonds in your life from there. And yeah, just always keep yourself open, and cliche, but stay true to yourself as well.
Myra, do you recall when you first decided you wanted to pursue a degree in the United Kingdom?
Yeah, so I think naturally taking IGCSEs and A levels, the natural path would be to study in the UK. But in general, I think I always knew I wanted to experience life abroad. I wanted to, see things from a different perspective, live on my own. And the UK was kind of a safe option, I would say, because there's already such an established Malaysian community there, no matter where you are. So it was, kind of a no brainer for me. And I always knew that I would like to experience university there.
What advice would you have for Malaysian A level students or just Malaysian students applying to the UK in general when it comes to the UCAS application?
Right. So actually, I think one of the biggest things is you should definitely seek advice from whoever your university counselor is. In KY, we were fortunate we had Podcast,
Yeah.
who was very helpful. And it might not be that you need to know exactly where you want to go, but it's nice to have an experienced professional's opinion on the options that you have, what options there are out there, and I feel like resources are always available. So I think reaching out to people within your academic circle is always important. Don't be shy, don't be scared. No one's going to judge you. I think it's only going to benefit you. And have your friends read your personal statements, try to showcase who you are in it and what you can contribute rather than trying to be perfect about it.
And where did you study and what did you study?
So I went to Durham University. I studied behavioral science.
Myra, I have to ask, Durham, is it actually what people make it out to be? Is it posh and is it filled with a bunch of Oxbridge rejects?
Mm, I cannot deny that. But I would say that, there is a level of poshness, but I feel like that comes in any university you go to in the UK. There's always going to be a more posh group or a more perceived to be posh group. But Durham itself was actually a very welcoming community. It's a university town. There's not much there, but that's exactly why you get to form these really nice connections, and you get to meet people from all over the world. Actually, there were a lot of students from Hong Kong. There were a lot of students from Indonesia. There were a lot of students from India, and um, I think Durham itself was a very quaint town, and the university was the same. And I can say that I felt really safe there. I never once felt unsafe, and I always had a good time.
Um, Behavioral science is a fascinating degree, right?
Mhm.
What exactly is it?
So, behavioral science is kind of a broad mix of psychology, about economics, and also sociology. So, I would say that you kind of get to have a very holistic view of the world from behavioral science, because it's very applicable to like real life situations. Even in my current job, I can see how some of those things I learned are or were relevant. It wasn't just about the theory of like psychology and like how people think. It's more about how you can see that in everyday scenarios and what you can do to actually change behaviors. And I thought that it was really interesting because um, now I feel like it's becoming increasingly relevant. You hear a lot about behavioral science and understanding human behaviors and what you can do to, you know, move forward. And yeah, overall, I think behavioral science was a really, really nice degree that I really enjoyed.
When you first headed over to Durham, was there any culture shocks that you faced or that you experienced?
Mm, Durham is a collegiate system, so there's only a few universities that have this collegiate system. So I was not used to it, and it was different because you weren't sure whether your college determines the rest of your uni life or not. So I think the culture shock was that every college had its own kind of like reputation and its own um, I don't know, kind of perks. So to me, I think it was funny that people did end up kind of morphing or living up to those stereotypes about each college. There would be a sporty college, there would be a posh college, there would be like a college filled with like, I don't know, more religious people. But I think overall, going to university in the UK, I guess the culture is very different. And I wouldn't say that it's a shock because, I mean, Western media kind of portrays a lot of it, but I would say that actually getting to live in that moment was nice because you get to see things from a different perspective. Yeah.
Did you ever experience any negative experiences being Asian in the UK?
I don't know if it was targeted, but I do think that there were a lot of stereotypes against Asians. I think I wouldn't say that it was deliberate. I would just say that it's more ignorant, the typical, "Oh my god, how is your English so good? How are you speaking?" or how, like, "Do you speak English? Like, what's Malaysia like? Is it developed?" Things like that. And you'd be shocked that a lot of people don't know what Asia or Southeast Asia is like at all. So yeah, but it's nice that you get to kind of share to them, actually, it's not as rural as you think. So yeah, I would say that I've had my fair share of instances with things like that.
So, will you say that the racism perhaps is a bit more subtle?
I would say that, yes, but sometimes I feel like it's not intentional as well.
Yeah,
Sometimes after you get to talk to them and educate them on, like, hey, maybe this
correct.
isn't the take you should have, or, like, there's more to Asia than you think. I do see that a lot of them do change their opinions, and it's nice. But of course, when it comes to other people, I've heard more concerning experiences, which might not be excusable at all.
What would you say is the first thing a Malaysian student needs to do when they first come to the UK? Or the first few things?
First few things, besides stocking up on all your, like, Asian grocery, I think connect with your Malaysian society. That is your most home community that you will have. You will meet so many people, and most Malaysian societies in the UK are very established. They always have events, and with UKAC, they bring all of those communities together, and you meet so many people there, and you'll start to see all your worlds kind of collide. So it's nice to have that community and have people who are from the same place as you. So definitely connect, because I've never heard of a bad experience with the Malaysian society before. Everyone's very welcoming, and there's always events. So it's really good if you get homesick easily. Yeah.
Mara, obviously you go to the UK to study, but a big part of it is the experience, right?
Yeah.
And what was your experience outside of studying?
Outside of studying. So I mentioned before with UKAC, I was actually a regional chairperson for the Northeast region. So I was involved in that, but outside of university, or outside of school, I joined societies like dance society and other, creative outlets. And besides that, I think I always made it a point to find time to travel, or find time to, explore other places. Um, Being from KY as well, all of my friends kind of dispersed all around the UK or even in Ireland. So it was nice having places that you could go and your friends would be there. So outside of uni, it's good to kind of explore, really open your mind up to different experiences that you won't get here. If you have the chance, travel. If you have the chance, visit your friends or have them over. There's a lot of things to do, a lot of things that you will miss when you come back. Yeah.
And you mentioned growing up you were involved in the performing arts, right?
Yeah.
Did you ever have the opportunity to take part in Malaysian Night?
Oh my god, unfortunately no, because I think M Night was only established in the last year that I was there, and with my exams and my dissertation I just did not have the time. But I would have loved to definitely be part of an M Night, and it was really really nice to kind of hear all my friends who did have that experience. London's M Nights are so grand and so nice. Even Warwick's M Nights are so great. So um, definitely for those who enjoy that, or even if you don't enjoy it, I think it's a really good experience and you should definitely try out. Yeah.
You worked as an undergraduate research assistant in Durham.
Yeah.
What was the role about, and how did you come to find a job?
So I think when it came to that role, I was just looking for opportunities that I could do within Durham. So, I wanted to explore things outside of my usual uni days or my lectures. So Durham had like a career portal, and I'm sure a lot of universities have the same. And I was just scrolling and scrolling, and I saw this undergraduate research assistant role, and I thought, why not? Because my degree was behavioral science, so we did a lot of research and statistics work as well. So I wanted something that I could kind of use those skills in real life, and um, basically it was just helping out with the professors or with the PhD students with their projects and what they were researching, and it was just trying to understand what they were doing and helping out any way possible. So things like, gathering all the data and like putting it in a more informative format for people to read or make it easier. So it was just helping out where you could, and it was nice to have that touch of blending what you learn from class to real life.
Moving on from the UK, right?
Yeah.
Talking about your professional experience and starting off with your internships. You were an employer branding intern at UI Malaysia.
Yeah. So when it came to employer branding, truthfully, before that, I never heard of employer branding. But when I saw that this was an option, I thought it was really interesting because employer branding is more of finding out what makes a company attractive and what makes it attractive for the people in there to stay. So I thought it was quite relevant to what I was learning because you get to learn, you know, how you can motivate people, how you can make the company perceived to be a good place to work. And so it was a lot of strategy, it was a lot of collaboration. I got to work with and meet a lot of people in every department in EY, and overall, it was a really positive experience.
How do you apply for the internship?
I applied through Grad One. So Grad One had the website where you could upload your CV and then you could apply to different firms. So of course, EY being a big four was definitely a plus. So I applied online and then I had some video interviews, and after that, I was offered the role.
How long was the internship?
The internship was 2 months.
Would you recommend it?
I would. I would. My managers there, my supervisors were really great. They were very welcoming. I still kind of catch up with them. I went to the Graduate Career Fair this year with my current company and I bumped into them again. So it was really nice to like see them and see things from a different perspective. Yeah.
And how did your background in behavioral science help you out with employer branding? Was it any correlation at all?
I'd say yes, there was a lot of correlation because you kind of understand people's behaviors, like I said. So I found that, knowing what motivates people, things like recognition, things like growth, things like meaning in their work is important. And so it was more of channeling, how can we integrate that to make people more motivated to work. So I realized that, when it comes to employer branding, it's not just all the external facing things that you see. Like, it's not just what you see on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook. It's about how you get people within the company to believe in it, and it's how you recognize the people working with you,
Yeah.
to kind of build that branding so that other people outside can see it.
How important do you think internships are for a student to prepare for the professional life?
Nowadays, I think it's becoming increasingly important. You see all penultimate students, seeking an internship, but it's not about, just getting that like title on your CV. It's about getting to experience the corporate life for the first time, or it might not even have to be a corporate life, but it's just about figuring out what type of work environment you want to be in, what type of work environment you think you thrive in. And I think it's important to figure that out early so that you know what you want and what you're looking for, in the long term.
So you've graduated and now you're a graduate trainee at Phillip Morris Malaysia.
Yeah.
Before we get into your role, have you always known that you wanted to work in Malaysia upon graduation?
I feel like I did. Of course, I had my, inklings that, what if I pursue a career here,
Yeah.
here being the UK, or what if I stay on. But ultimately, I think I knew that I wanted to go home, contribute to Malaysia, and be surrounded by my friends and family. I did know that, I wanted to work in Malaysia.
Was friends and family the biggest consideration?
I think so. I'm quite a, homebody. I am very family oriented, and I only have one sibling. So to me, it was important that I spent time with my family, as much as I could.
What do you do at Philip Morris Malaysia?
So right now I'm a graduate trainee. So basically, what that means is that I rotate among different roles, within the company. So it's an 18-month program, and I've rotated twice already. Oh, actually, no, three times. I'm in my third stint. So I did my first stint on the field. It was a lot of like groundwork. It was a lot of, getting to know the core business. And then in my second stint was back in the office where I did a lot of commercial facing work, and I'm currently in my third stint in external affairs.
Mara, I imagine it would pop up a lot in conversations, especially with people who you are closer with,
Yeah.
discussions about the ethical role that comes with your company.
Yeah, that is definitely something that I kind of face day to day. But, to me, I think I personally wanted to be part of a company that was into growth and transformation. And personally, I'm not a smoker or a nicotine consumer of any sort, but it was about the company's mission and the values. PMI is one of the only companies that has such a clear mission, which is to become smoke free by 2030. And to me, that was something very bold and something that really attracted me. So I liked that, the idea of a company that knows where it's headed, knows how it's going to head there, and where it wants to be in the end. I think that aligns more with my ethics than, the traditional tobacco stigma, because right now, Philip Morris is actively working towards a smoke free future. And I would say that is a huge factor in why I am where I am now.
And are you proud to be part of that movement towards a smoke-free future?
Yes, I am, because I see the changes every single day. In my last year of working, I've seen how it's progressed. I've gotten to know kind of the business at all angles, and I get to see how we are actually working towards this smoke free future. And it's really inspiring to me because, again, like I said, no other company has such a bold mission. Our CEO Yachek, he boldly stated that we want to phase out cigarettes, and I feel like that is such a big statement, and putting that out there is a huge commitment. And I have seen that everyone in the company truly believes in it, and I believe in it, and I'm proud to be part of such a transformative change.
Now, with having graduated and this is your first graduate role, what were the things that you picked up earlier on? Was there like any experiences that changed your perspective on things?
I would say the field rotation. I feel like that was a very humbling experience. It was very different. Working in an FMCG is very different from working in any other corporate type of role, because you are, you know, in a lot of retail, in a lot of like stores, everyone sees your products, and you don't really realize how much is going into it or what the day to day is like to make those products available for you. And I think for me, that field rotation was so valuable because I can say that I've had that ground experience. I've had that experience of seeing things in real life firsthand, seeing consumer behavior, seeing how things move in the market. And I feel like it's very unique because not every company would be trusting enough to put you out there. But for me, I ended up really enjoying it. And I think it's something that I will take through for the rest of my career, no matter where I am.
Mara, as someone trained in behavioral science, right?
Yeah.
How do you view what a customer wants and against a corporate social responsibility?
Mm. I think definitely it is a two-way street. It's a shared responsibility. Consumers and customers, they all have agency. They all have choice. But it is also our corporate responsibility to give better options, to make better choices. You can't have one without the other. And so I think ultimately it's something that has to work together.
What were
Yeah.
your biggest considerations when you were looking for a job?
For me, definitely it's the work culture. I'm very ambitious, I'm very confident in my work, and I know what type of work environment I would like. So I think having a work environment, especially post COVID, that flexibility is something that I look for. I tend to gravitate towards, jobs that are more flexible or provide that flexibility, hybrid working arrangements, things like that. I think that's very important, not just in the context of like work life balance, but just personally for yourself as well, being in a company that trusts you. And I think for me, being in a company that invests in you, invests in your time, invests in your growth. And that is exactly why I picked PMI as well, because I saw firsthand that they are very committed to your growth and accelerating your growth and where you want to be. And they're constantly checking up on you on, what are your long term goals or what are your short term goals. And I think it's important that companies are always on top of that. They always check in with you and they know you and they know how you operate. And also, of course, besides that, there were other factors like, proximity. I wanted to work somewhere that was nearby and convenient. So to me, it was just perfect where I am now. But I would say that the biggest factor is the work culture.
Obviously, when you first graduate, right, for instance, some of my friends, when you hear that they're working in auditing and it seems like work-life balance does not
Yeah.
exist. So Is work life balance a myth, or do you think it can exist?
I think it can definitely exist, but again, it's very different in different industries, you know. But I think being transparent about it and knowing what you're getting into is important as well. You know, if let's say, like you said, if you want to go into auditing, you know that the long hours are kind of, it comes with the job,
Yeah.
and especially during really busy seasons. But if that's not something that you like or something that you think you are okay with, then there are always other options. There are always other choices. But of course, I think now work life balance is more and more relevant, and I think it's important that companies also move with that and also provide options for employees, you know, so things like, you know, hybrid working days, having time that you can take off without any questions. I think that's important, and that all comes with work culture and how companies value its people.
What is one thing that you learned? Like, what was the overarching lesson that you experienced?
I think one lesson I've learned is that you should always expect the unexpected, you know. Never put yourself in a box. It's okay to not have your life figured out. I have not had a point in time where I thought, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I know exactly where I'm going to end up, and that's okay. You know, everyone obviously wants to have a clear path, but it's okay if you don't, because there are always going to be opportunities, and it's kind of about making those opportunities for yourself. So, you know, don't put yourself in a box. Always keep an open mind, and the opportunities will follow. For me as well, like, as long as you ground your decisions in your own values and your own ethics, you can never go wrong.
Myra, now that we're at the end, can you describe your Lepas Sekolah journey in 3 words?
3 words. I would say unexpected, very transformative, and very empowering. My name is Myra, and this is my journey Lepas Sekolah.